Alright boys, let's not waste any time, let's get right down to it. So, what I have in front of me are the STAX L300s, which are electrostatic ear speakers. They're not headphones. These were imported from Japan, not by me, but by someone. By the way, this is supposed to be where the serial number is at, but I went ahead and blocked this with this piece of paper just to block stuff out. Anyway, these are the L300s, and these are the Sennheiser HD600s. And as you may or may not know, these are pretty much the benchmark of neutrality as far as audiophilia is concerned. So, what happens when we compare these two? What do we have here? We have the king of neutrality versus the newcomer, the budget electrostatic king. Well, let's start off with the content here. The key difference between the 600s and the L300s is that the L300 is usually offered in a bundle alongside the STAX SRM252S Energizer, the type of amplifier required to run them. More on that later, by the way. The HD600s come with a thin, long, and flexible cable, as you can see right here, 3.5 millimeter to 1/4 inch adapter, a nice black box that doubles as a display box, and some manuals, whereas on the flip side, the L300 come with the ear speakers themselves, the SRM252S, the electrostatic energizer, a thin and flexible pair of RCA cables, and a wall wart rated at 100 volts, which is something you'll have to replace to get these to work in the US properly. Again, more on that later. So now let's jump into the build quality. Yeah, this one is no comparison. The HD600s take the cake by a landslide. And here's the thing. The HD600s are mostly made of plastic. Yeah, that sounds bad, right? It's not as bad as you think it sounds. The cups, the headband, and most of the inner structure are a well-made glossy plastic in a quail egg finish, as you can see. Here, there we go. Now there is some metal to it, primarily here in the area that connects the ear cups and the headband, as well as the grill itself. This is also metallic. And obviously the drivers themselves are neodymium dynamic drivers, so metal. Now the L300s on the flip side are made out of a very, very cheap plastic. Listen, this is the type that looks like it could break at pretty much any moment. This is the type of stuff that, like, wait, listen. Not that. That was just that hitting my watch. Yeah, listen. These make sound. They do. But it's not that terrible when you're just wearing them on your head or just adjusting them. It's really not a big deal. The big deal is that the type of cheap plastic these are made of looks like something straight out of a Chinese warehouse. And we're not talking the type of Chinese warehouse that manufactures for Apple. No. We're talking the Chinese warehouse that manufactures for those vendors you see at a downtown area. Now, I never said they were Chinese. All I said was they're vendors in your downtown area. They happen to get their products from a Chinese factory. There's a difference. There's a big difference. Now, the HD600 cable is that traditional two-part rubberized headphone cable, the one you've seen everywhere. It does come with that 1/4 inch adapter, like I said. Whereas the L300's cable is a ribbon cable with a total of 6 cords. If you can count them there. Can you count for me, please? Can you do your job and focus? Yo. As you can see here, total of 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The L300's headband is a suspension strap style where a strip of cloth pretty much helps the headband bungee on top of the user's head. And the top component of the headband consists of a plastic and has the label STAX at the very top, as you can see right there. Whereas this one is made out of a thin cloth-like material. It's nice, it's soft, but I wouldn't say it feels premium either. The HD600's headband on the flip side is one of a more traditional setup with a total of 4 foam nuggets, as you can see right there, that rest between the headband and the user's scalp. Now the 600 pads are made out of velour and are noticeably thicker than the L300s, which are made of a fake leather, yet are extremely thin. It's like, look at this. You see that right there? Look at the depth. Look, watch this. Yeah, these things are not exactly super plush, super deep either. So you do get that. As far as the plushness goes, they are somewhat of a tie, and here's why. These can be a little more plush than the HD600's pads. Whereas the HD600 pads are full, they're not very plush, and they're not memory foam either. They're not springy. Well, actually, they might be more springy than anything else. They're just kind of an outdated technology for ear pads, but still doable. Still gets the job done for sure. Now, as far as the comfort goes, the story flips around because it's also a landslide victory, except in the opposite direction. The STAX win the comfort department by far. So here's the thing. These have a recipe for success. These have a recipe for disaster in theory. But in execution, in practice, the fact that these are made out of a very cheap, thin plastic make them incredibly lightweight, and their clamp force makes them just strong enough to fit very securely on your head while not feeling too loose, yet not feeling too tight either. You can definitely wear these for hours on end with relatively no comfort issues, except for maybe the inside of the cup, as you can see right there. If you can see that baffle right there, if I can just aim it right. I cannot aim it right. Okay. If you can see that that plastic right inside the cup, right in front of the driver. Yeah, for some people, you will feel this on the back of your ears, and there are mods to flip this around to increase the comfort, but you might want to do it, you might not, totally up to you. I personally didn't really find a need to do this, although I did feel them on the ears, and it wasn't really the most comfortable thing in the world, if I'm being honest here. Also, thing to mention, their extremely open design, which makes them look like a fly swatter, honestly, allows for maximum breathability, which results in being able to wear them for much longer sessions. Although the HD600s are still decent in the comfort department, and note that I said decent, not amazing, just decent. They don't hold a candle to the STAX. They just don't. Now, as far as tech is concerned, the reason I'm including this section in this comparison is because these are not the same type of product. Like I mentioned, these are a traditional dynamic driver that can be driven single-ended or balanced by any solid-state and tube amplifier. The L300s, on the flip side, are an ear speaker. The type of device required to power these is called an electrostatic energizer, which utilizes static as energy to power the drivers. You cannot drive the L300s off of a phone or traditional music player alone. They are portable electrostatic energizers out there, but they can get quite expensive, rendering them somewhat pointless to pair with an L300, unfortunately. Like, it doesn't make sense. Why would you pair a $900 portable STAX Energizer with a $400 to $350 electrostatic ear speaker? It just doesn't make sense. Also, the wall wart that comes included with the kit is a 100-volt solution, which you should not use in the United States. Instead, look for a wall wart rated for 110 to 120 volts with a reverse polarity, as in the positive pole on the outer ring and the negative pole on the inner ring. It looks kind of like this. Positive, negative. And now we jump into the sound quality. So, because the sound of the L300 is affected by using glasses, I went ahead and performed all of this testing without glasses, as this will reflect the majority of use cases best. And keep in mind, generally speaking, yes, I perform them without glasses, but especially when I feel like it really does affect the sound quality, I perform them even more so without glasses. So, bass. As far as the bass is concerned, look, the bass on the HD600 sounds closer to neutral, yet it's more linear. Now, on the flip side, the L300 the bass can be all over the place. So between the sub and the mid bass area, there is a bit of a boost, creating a more enjoyable experience, if I'm going to be honest. And it is also the faster bass response of the two. However, it also begins to roll off very quickly, quite high into the frequency response. So I'll give you an example. Zealots of Stockholm by Childish Gambino. At the 3:06 minute mark, the HD600s remain present for a bigger portion of that valley, while the L300s just faded quite quickly, if I'm going to be honest with you. Now, another example. Get Lucky by Daft Punk featuring Pharrell Williams. The bass guitar on the L300s is more forward, yet have better texture than the HD600s. Other than that, they're pretty similar as far as the quality goes. Now, as far as the mids are concerned, quite honestly, I really don't have anything to point out here. The mids, both instruments and vocals, they sound really similar between the two units. The L300 do seem to offer a bit more speed in the mids, although slightly thinner as well. So, if anything at all, the L300 sound a tad more open and offer a bit better separation between the instruments. Not necessarily better detail, just a clearer space, like more room to breathe. So, for example, imagine two fly swatters. It isn't that one is necessarily better than the other, it's just that one kind of seems like it has slightly bigger holes. So, take that as you will. Now we jump into the treble department. Okay, so big difference right here. The HD600s hold a treble response that is known to many as being extremely close to neutral, with a very slight veil at the top of it. At the very top of it. So when comparing the L300s to the 600s, that definitely makes them sound like the correct description. So because of the elevation in treble, the L300s definitely possess an airier sound to tracks. Whether this can be a good thing or not depends entirely on the source material. So if you're listening to classical, this airiness is a massive gain. Like, seriously massive gain. On the flip side, it is a massive caveat if you are listening to, say, EDM. So thankfully that mid-bass hump does give EDM a little more enjoyability as far as the trebles go, but because of that really just excessive airiness and sometimes lack of proper mastering that EDM offers, the HD600s can be a more forgiving listen and offer a better listening experience for your pleasure. Now, as far as the soundstage is concerned, the soundstage on the L300s is wider than the HD600s, period. That's all I have to say. It's not like a night and day difference, but you can definitely hear a little bit of width to that soundstage. Now, imaging. So the imaging on both is fantastic, but the L300s do have the upper edge over the 600s by just a hair. I mean, just a hair. Another example, Core Pride by Uberworld. Yes, I'm a weeb, okay? Assuming. At the 253 mark, the acoustic guitars on both sides of the guitar solo are far easier to track as they kind of descend, if you know what I mean. Like, you can hear them both on the left and the right, and they kind of hear like a like that. Listening to this and tracking those as they go a little up and then come down is much easier on the L300s than it is on the HD600s. The entire track has moments that are excellent for critical listening, and I think the L300 really did edge out the HD600s by a bit as well. So before we get into the conclusion, I got to go over some notes and observations. Look, during my personal listening, I did happen to apply EQ to these since I generally cannot stand the L300 sound at stock configuration, like especially on treble heavy tracks. Like, Bangarang just kills me. I can't listen to Bangarang on these. I just can't. So these are the EQ settings that I went ahead and applied to the L300s right here. I don't apply any EQ to the HD600s just because I want to keep them as neutral as possible. But those are the EQ settings I applied using the Piece GUI using Equalizer APO on Windows 10. So, applying these reduces the harshness introduced by the elevated treble response while not completely eliminating it. That is to say, it does remain treble heavy, but to a lesser extent. So, the sub-bass boost helps prevent the L300's bass drop from disappearing so high above in the frequency response, while also adding a bit of extra oomph to EDM tracks and not introducing distortion to any other part of the spectrum. And let me tell you, as far as those EDM tracks, as far as those bass heavy genres are concerned, that extra 2 decibels at 30 hertz makes a big difference. It really does. But anyways, so let's jump into the conclusion here. Why did I compare these two products when they are two very different offerings at very different price points? And I am counting the L300 as a $700 audio product because they are typically sold with the SRM252S Energizer as a unit and require it for power anyways. Look, like I said, the HD600s are widely regarded as a staple in the dynamic driver world, while the L300s are the budget electrostat that most people start with. Yes, the COS ESP95X has popped up on mass drop recently, or should I say drop, but it's not the same. It's really not the same. Pros and cons, but mainly like L300s because STAX. Everybody looks at STAX like those are the electrostatic energizers, STAX. Look, if you're venturing into the world of electrostats, it is important to note how they compare against very popular, safe choices like a more traditional and staple headphone like the HD600. Jesus Christ. In the end, these two remain very different products. The HD600s remain a master of none, except for maybe the mids. The mids, those vocals are wow. But anyway, they remain a benchmark in tonality and neutrality to this day, 21 years after their inception. If I'm not mistaken, these came out in 99, correct? Or was it 98? Or was it 2001? I don't know, it was a long time ago, and yet they're still here, and yet they're still relevant. As well as being excellent in every other department. There is no one department that's like, oh, they really wet the bed here. Maybe just with the bass being rolled off so early, but it's about it, man. That's about it. These things are, you know, they're great. Now the L300s, on the other hand, are master of some, but also they're not without their caveats. They really fail in other departments. So even though they are brilliant in the mids to treble department and provide fantastic imaging, their bass response, shoddy build quality, and overall thin tonality really bumped them down from having been one of the best personal audio items within the sub $1,000 mark to just being okay, you know. Okay, yeah, you ought to try it. You ought to try it. It's a different experience. Look, I've stated this before, and I'll state it again. The L300 is best for experienced audiophiles that have tried and owned many dynamics and planars and are now seeking something different, like vastly different to add to their lineup. Yeah, the L300s will definitely grant you that and make you want to add them to your collection, for sure. But I don't think they are the one headphone to rule them all. You know, enough said. I'm going to just end it here. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Check it out down below. Leave your opinion. What do you think of my review? And yeah, that's really all I have to say. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to check out the Patreon. And I will see you again in the next video.